views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as many of you may be aware, Dr. Irving Fradkin, founder of the Scholarship America program, Dollars for Scholars, has passed away. He died at the age of 95. We here at Spindle City Straight Talk want to recognize Dr. Fradkin for all his work in the community and for everything he's done for our students here in Fall River. This has not been an easy task for him. In 1957, he came up with a vision after losing an election for school committee. And that program became Dollars for Scholars. It was named that way because trying to collect quarters and dimes and everything from neighborhood businesses, Dr. Fradkin was handed $1 and they said, here's $1. And ever since then, Dollars for Scholars has grown. He was the founder of, again, the founder of Scholarship Americas, and he will be greatly missed. His services will be held at the Temple Bethel tomorrow at noon, with an interment immediately thereafter at the Temple Bethel Cemetery. We want to reach out to all the friends of Dr. Fradkin, and as is law of the Talmud, the true judge is God.
Let me also say that our deepest condolences go to his family. He was a contributor to one of the most important facet, I feel, in society. He tried to get people to educate themselves and to go to college, and he made it easier for people without the financial resources to get there. And it was he lived a full and long life, and he will be missed, and his contributions and what he founded will never be forgotten, because education, the better educated you are, the more opportunities you have, and there's nothing more important than that. And he was one of the greatest advocates I've ever seen, and when it came to encouraging education. So.
I was the recipient of one of Dr. Fradkin's scholarships many, many years ago, and I was with him not too long ago here at Bristol Community College. And he was an amazing man, and even after suffering blindness, he still continued on with his great work. And the only way I have to end this is the way it should be done. And to Dr. Fradkin's friends, supporters, and family, may God console you among the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.
Yep, may you rest in peace.
So.
And with that, your audio's a little low, CJ, just a tiny bit, but you probably don't have your mic position.
My mic is on. I think it's a matter of solace.
we may actually, you may be going out at the right volume, and we've had that problem before.
Right.
Live TV. Well, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk, and it is another week in paradise.
Is that what you want to call it?
It's another Monday, and again, we begin the cycle of little bit of distortion and.
Yeah, I think we need to clear that up right away, Chip, because it appears to me that either Pravda has gotten information wrong, or several other people have. And I had said in our weekend flush some issues that are already going on, and I think it's necessary that we clear up some of this right away. And now, stepping aside from being a host of Spindle City Straight Talk, but in your role as a member of the retirement board, you would have direct knowledge of what's actually going on, and you seem to know what's happening. So what wasn't reported, I think, is just as important as what may have been reported. So
well, yeah, and I think you're right, CJ. And again, it always disturbs me when the city uses things like this as a, as a scare tactic, like they do with getting rid of firefighters and police, or as a bargaining tactic. It's, I have heard from some very reliable sources in leadership of various unions that the city is basically forcing all the unions into arbitration to settle their contracts. So number one, that's not too bright, because they're going to get hundreds of thousands worth of bills in legal fees to do this. And when you go to arbitration, the Joint Labor Management Commission, the JLMC, the first thing you have to prove is ability to pay. And I believe that the city is bringing this subject up because they're going to, again, say they can't afford it. They can't give these people pay raises. Yet when they gave all the department heads pay raises, they had plenty of money. We had a $5.1 million, a $5.2 million surplus in free cash. We got plenty of money. Let's give the raises out. And the city council gave all the raises out. Now when it comes to paying the people who actually work for a living, it's the same old thing. I speak from experience. I went to 2 JLMC hearings, and we won both because we did prove the city's ability to pay. But let's get back to the retirement system. Listen, the retirement system is an extremely complicated issue here. People don't understand a lot about the retirement system, and they also don't understand when they're talking about, Kathy Ann Viveris again is talking about a $336 million unfunded liability. Well, that's an actuarial projection, and that unfunded liability, much of which is caused because what wasn't in this article there's a list and saying Fall River is 41.3% funded. At one time, the retirement system in Fall River was 80% funded. And because the city did not put in enough money into the system, it fell down into the 40s. We're actually moving up. When I first got elected to the retirement board, we were at 40%. Now we're at 41.3. And that was caused by the city not putting in enough money, over projecting how much money they were going to get, even though we had a bad market, and underfunding the system. I made a presentation in front of council which said that between 2002 and 2012, this city put in $89 million less toward its retirement system than did the city of New Bedford, which is fairly comparable. If we did it exactly, it might have been a little bit more, a little bit less that we needed to put in. Bottom line is they underfunded the system. They skimmed, just like they do with all pension systems. That's one of the reasons that all these pension systems run out of money. It's because government skims money from the pension systems. The employees pay their share, it's taken out of their paycheck. They don't have any ability to not pay. When I first was elected, the Sutter administration was going to pay us 3 months late. I asked for a per act projection on how much that would add to the unfunded liability, and it was over $600,000. So you can imagine the impact of not paying on time. What I want to tell everybody is that $336 million that they love to talk about, because that's what the city does. When they want to screw somebody, like employees, they say, we don't have any money, we're broke. But yet, when it comes time for the budget or give pay raises to their friends, they tell us how financially secure the city is and how wonderful they're doing, and we can bond for everything. But, well, when you bond, guess what, Kathy? This unfunded liability you were talking about is a fiduciary obligation of the city. It's supposed to be in the budget. And there's a plan statewide. There have been changes to the retirement system. Top 5 years rather than top 3. The projections right now is that if all systems do what they were supposed to do, and the actuarial projections are correct, and they may not be exact, the system will be funded by between 2035 and 2040. I'll remind everybody out there that when this system was created, it was supposed to be fully funded by 2010, 6 years ago. But it wasn't, because city and town governments continued to underfund and skim money. So it's the city's fault, and again, they're going to hold the employees and the taxpayers responsible for their fiduciary incompetence. I made it very clear when I was elected to retirement board. I was elected. I was not appointed. I was elected by the members of the retirement board. And I will not allow them to pay late, and I will not allow them to not pay in full, because it's their obligation to do so. And only if they pay in full and on time will we ultimately get to be having a fully funded pension system. This is a liability that every mayor, every city council was aware of. The fact that it plummeted is their fault, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's their fault. And it's not 336 million. That's an aggregate. Like if everybody retired and the projections of everybody. And they also did another little thing that I'm not in favor of, but they did it. They put more of a burden on the Fall River retirement system by bringing in people who are not Fall River employees. They don't work for the city of Fall River, because the politicians go there to hide and nest and get big money. We have the Fall River Housing Authority, which is a federal agency, basically. They're in the Fall River retirement system. We have CDA, another federally funded, in the Fall River retirement system. Why didn't they put them in the federal retirement system or the county retirement system or some other retirement system? That increases the unfunded liability. Granted, there's not a lot of those people, but they were put in the system. Why? Because the politicians wanted to do that. Why is Lou Pacheco in the county system? He was the police chief of Rainham. Because the people in Rainham realized this is a huge financial obligation. You try to get as few people in the system as possible. So they put their employees in a county system. He's in the county system. He's not in the Fall River system or the Rainham system. It's a very complex issue, but the bottom line is they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They never do what they're supposed to do. They didn't pay on time. They skimmed money, and now they're going to try to use it against the unions when they go to arbitration and say, look how much money we owe. Well, guess what? When I did my research, at one time the city of Fall River was 80% funded. How did we get down to 40? We would be 80, 85%, maybe higher if they would have paid that $89 million. Who knows where we would have been? It wouldn't have been an issue. It's always going to be an issue, just like retirement is. They want to eliminate Social Security. They want to eliminate retirement. People pay in, and they pay more than they pay for Social Security. And this is another red herring, an issue that the city has created. They know what the retirement system costs. They get the numbers from the retirement board and from PERAC every year. They've known in advance since this system has been there. The fact that they didn't handle it properly is not a surprise to me. But as long as I'm on the board, I will be working not only for the people in the system, but for the taxpayers of Fall River to make sure the city does its fiduciary part to make this system and get this system fully funded so it's no longer an issue.
Sorry about that. You know, Chip, one of the things I think is interesting, something that the public doesn't understand, is that the entire Commonwealth does not contribute to Social Security.
Yeah.
Because the city doesn't want to have to pay their 7% match, and the employees would have to pay. Now, here's the kicker. Everyone says, well, you know, if the pension system goes apart, then we can fall back on Social Security. No, you can't. And if you collect any form of Social Security while you're receiving a state pension, there's an offset on the Social Security side. Now, what was it? In the 1980s, the state and the city decided to sign on to the Medicare program,
Yeah.
which now the city and the state has to make their matching contribution to Medicare. And that was to save the city's money on the health care costs for the retirees.
And they're doing it.
Right.
They're saving a tremendous amount. It's always the lowest. And not only did they do it, they didn't make it optional.
Right.
They made sure that the politicians made sure that if you were eligible for Medicare, you are statutorily mandated to go on to Medicare. You can't say, well, I don't want to be on Medicare. I want to stay on a city health care plan. You can't.
Right. Now,
You're mandated, so now the feds pick up 80%. Yet they do that on one hand, and on the other hand, they bring in people that are not Fall River employees into the system to put a bigger burden on the system. You know, this is the whole dichotomy here. The city is bipolar. When they want to say how rich they are when they're giving themselves a pay raise, there's never an issue about finances in the city. Oh, don't worry about it. Bonding's good. We got money in free cash. We got this. We got that. And then when it comes time to negotiate contracts for other people, or they want to raise the tax rate, they start going, oh, they put their hands on their head and, oh me, oh my, we're broke. Look at all these, look at all the bills we got. Well, guess what? You got that bill, and it's as big as it is. Don't worry. That's only my cane falling from my hip.
I thought it was a terrorist coming after you.
Yeah,
I think the drones are coming for you.
It was a drone that came into the studio. But look, we got here because of their actions. The fact is that there was a period there where they severely, even though the market sucked, they severely overestimated how much money we were going to get in return on our investments, and they severely underestimated the liability. So that translates into the system going in the toilet and going from 80 to 40%. And what the board did then was remove that decision from people who were appointed to the board and had a financial and political interest in giving more money to the mayor and not putting it in the system where it belonged. They took it out of their hands. Now the Fall River retirement system, their investments are handled by PRIM, the Public Retirement Investment Management. They are a state organization. So therefore, they've taken the decision-making away from people who can be appointed to the retirement board and then talk about their financial expertise and convince the people to do the board to make investments or underestimate or overestimate. The state does it. The state does it for many, many, many retirement boards have gone to PRIM. As a matter of fact, I gave the writer of this article, Mike Holtzman, a copy of the monthly report we get from PRIM about investments. They go for solid investments. And that's the other thing about the system. You don't take risk investments when you're talking about a system like this. And they did in many cases, and they're liable for that. At the seminar I went to this summer, they talked about the fiduciary responsibility and how boards can be sued for making really bad investments. So PRIM handles that now, and so we've begun to change for the better. The board's done its part. And I mean, as I said, the unfunded liability is something nobody knows. We could have, who knows? I'm going to upset a lot of people here, but let's say Donald Trump becomes the savior of the economy and everything booms and everybody's getting a lot of returns on their investments. The unfunded liability could be paid off sooner. We could end up with more money because what happens is we fund through our investments and we get closer and closer to being fully funded because of our investments. Rather than that, we had a few really bad years in the past, and we could have a few really good years. So these are all projections. That's why they said between 2035 and 40 we should be funded. But all these things are, the jury's out. But what the city owes is sent down by PERAC. They know full well in advance they're supposed to budget it, and if they don't, I'm going to be on them for sure. And that's one of the problems we have. You know, and then they try to talk about this other thing about, mostly about, they had a separate article about Mike Coogan, who actually were making money on him because he retired at such a reduced pension. If he stayed working, he would have got a lot more, and they had the figures. But, you know, the thing that kills the retirement system, they talk about things, it's when people like former mayors leave their $120,000 mayor's job, slide around and bounce around until they get a $300,000 or $250,000 or $300,000 a year job with the state, and they triple their pension or quadruple their pension. Joan Menard did it. She got a job that more than doubled her pension. Dave Sullivan did it, almost tripled his pension. Kathy Ann Viveris will do it. She's not going to get a pension based on her city council tenure. She's the city administrator, soon to be another pay raise over at the Housing Authority. That's what all the rumors are about. And so these are the people that line up. Billy Bolger. Billy Bolger was making about, I don't know, 65, 70,000 as a senator, and that was a long time ago. And he went over to UMass Dartmouth, and they immediately gave him a $200,000 a year pay raise.
Eddie Lambert.
Eddie Lambert's making almost, I don't know, between $250,000 and $300,000.
Exactly.
You know, Billy Bolger left a $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year job, and got a $125,000 a year job, and he immediately gave him, elevated the salary to $325,000 a year. So, you know, it's like this is what caves systems in throughout the state. The reason is such a problem is government and government patronage. But as far as the liability is concerned, I've done this dance with the city before. They whine about everything when they go in front of the JLMC because they don't want to give the people who actually work a pay raise.
No, we got to give it to our political, political hacks and whores. Yeah.
And they'll whine about it.
Right.
So, you know, don't get too upset when you see that $336 million. That's a total actuarial projection. You look at what they're paying this year, they said basically $19 million is toward the unfunded liability out of the $27 million they're paying. The rest is their portion of this year's, you know, the employees pay, the city pays. So, you know, it's not $336 million they owe, it's $336 million they owe over the next 20 or 30 years. So when they banter that figure around and they go, oh me, oh my, but all of a sudden when we get a 30-year bond, it's no big deal.
Right, exactly.
It's not a big deal. But when it's for the pension system, it's a big deal.
Well, you know, and again, this is where our pension system here in the Commonwealth is flawed. Because I'm going to pick Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, they pay into Social Security. When they collect their Social Security, they don't have an offset because they pay into it. And it's matched. The reason why you get an offset in Massachusetts is because even though you paid into it in the private sector, you never paid into it during this period of time in government service. Therefore, the offset must apply. Because there's been no contribution. And this creates a problem. I mean, I have family members who get county pensions and state pensions, and they're eligible for Social Security based on their time in the private sector or in their own businesses. And as many of them have said, the amount of money I get from Social Security doesn't even pay for my Medicare premium or to buy me a case of beer. That's pretty sad, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, if you look at the system, just like working for the government, if you're a worker, you know, it's stacked against you. Because if you look at the way the pension system's made, it's like, okay, you get these people, now they've expanded it to 5 years, the high five, your 5-year average rather than the 3. So that's helped. But let's look at it. For example, Lou Pacheco, the judge, You talk about they work part-time, there's a cap. But the way that cap works, it's based on their salary. So if you get somebody like Eddie Lambert, who's getting when he retires, or Billy Bolger, who retired at nearly probably $250,000 for a pension, he could actually go out and get another job and get paid $200,000, and it doesn't affect his pension at all. But some poor stiff who worked all his life and gets a $75,000, $60,000 pension, if he gets a pretty good gig somewhere, he's going to forfeit a lot of his pension. So the fact is that it's skewed toward the rich and nauseous, the political, the political hacks who get the big pensions. Look at the list of pensions, the highest pensions in the state. And
Boston
look who they are.
Boston Globe actually published that list from the Commonwealth's retirement system, and you're very surprised. But I want to get some clarification on this for our viewers, because a couple of questions just popped up. So if John Smith, who retired as a lieutenant in the Fall River Fire Department, went out and got a job for Walmart, making $20,000 more than his pension, is he going to lose that in his pension?
If it's a side business, there's a different ratio. When you're doing a public thing like whore and stuff,
right?
That's where the 960 hours complete.
Right,
yeah, he will. We have people who have side businesses. They make a lot of money, and they are penalized. But the key is that actually we at the last meeting we just went over somebody who hadn't put in the paperwork about how much they had made, and they have to stop the payments and not pay. So but the system is stacked toward the higher tier people get the bigger breaks. The politicians who get the $300,000 a year jobs, the formulas that are used for there favor those people. So just like everything else. And the other thing is we have people that are pumped into the system that never go on, so especially school department. These people, and there's nothing wrong with it, but that's their life. They come out of high school, they go to college. They get out of college, they get a job probably teaching. And what happens? They never pay into Social Security. So now, at the end of their career, when they retire, they have no Social Security.
Right.
They're not eligible for Medicare. So the city then has to eat the fact that they have to stay on the regular medical. They don't get the 80% benefit by forcing those people into Medicare because they're not eligible. And they're trying to figure out a way to do that as we speak, but they're not eligible. So there are a lot of factors. It's a very complicated issue, but the bottom line is, it gets down to a very, very basic bottom line. If the city pays its share, if the things go according to the formulas and the actuarial projections, it should have been funded by 2010. It wasn't, because governments skimmed money, and again, government skimmed money to get us where we are. And if they do what they're supposed to do, this won't be an issue between 2035 and 2040.
Well, that's interesting, because again, all I can say is this, because we're coming to the end of our show here. Shame on you, Mr. Mayor, trying to strong arm the unions into impact bargaining. And you know what? That doesn't fly with me. If the city really couldn't afford it, I wouldn't have a problem. But obviously, the rumors and the statements of many of the people who work with you, see you, and have had interaction with you all say the same thing, that you get very frustrated and very upset, and you act like a 6-year-old child who says, "You're not going to play with me, right? I'm taking my baseball bat and going home." Just doesn't work for me.
That's right, stay angry, because remember, they never had a problem giving every city council, they never had a problem giving all his department heads and appointees a pay raise. Now he's going to force all the people who work every day and service this community, he's going to force them into arbitration. And when you get the almost $1 million bill for all these, when you get the aggregate for all these arbitrations, remember that. Stay really angry.